The Ancient Wisdom by Annie Besant. Chapter 11. Man's Ascent. So stupendous is the ascent by which some men have climbed, and some are climbing, that when we scan it by an effort of the imagination, we are apt to recoil, wearied in the thought of the mere idea of that long journey. From the embryonic soul of the lowest savage to the liberated and triumphant, perfectly spiritual soul of the divine man, it seems scarcely credible that the one can contain in it all that is expressed in the other, and that the difference is but a difference in evolution, that one is only at the beginning and the other is at the end of man's ascent. Below the one stretch the long ranks of the subhuman, the animals, vegetables, minerals, elemental essences. Above the other stretch the infinite gradations of the superhuman, the Chohans, Manus, Buddhas, builders, Lapikas, or who may name or number the hosts of the mighty ones. Looked at thus as a stage, in a yet vaster life, the many steps within the human kingdom shrink into a narrower compass, and man's ascent is seen as compromising but one grade in evolution in the linked lives that stretch from the elemental essence onward to the manifested God. We have traced man's ascent from the appearance of the embryonic soul to the state of the spiritually advanced, through the stages of evolving consciousness, from the life of sensation to the life of thought. We have seen him retread the cycle of birth and death in the three worlds, each world yielding him its harvest and offering him opportunities for progress. We are now in a position to follow him into the final stages of his human evolution, stages that lie in the future for the vast bulk of humanity but have already been trodden by its eldest children, and that are being trodden by a slender number of men and women in our own day. These stages have been classified under two headings. The first are spoken of as constituting the probationary path, while the latter ones are included in the path proper, or the path of discipleship. We will take them in their natural order as a man's intellectual, moral, and spiritual nature develops. He becomes more and more conscious of the purpose of human life and more eager to accomplish that purpose in his own person. Repeated longings for earthly joys, followed by full possession and by subsequent weariness, have gradually taught him the transient and unsatisfactory nature of earth's best gifts. So often has he striven for, gained, enjoyed, been satiated, and finally nauseated, that he turns away, discontented from all that earth can offer. What doth it profit, sighs the wearied soul? All is vanity and vexation. Hundreds, yea, thousands of times have I possessed, and finally have found disappointment, even in possession. These joys are illusions, as bubbles on the stream, fairy-colored, rainbow-hued, but bursting at a touch. I am athirst for realities. I have had enough of shadows. I pant for the eternal and the true, for freedom from limitations that hem me in, that keep me a prisoner, and these changing shows. Amid these changing shows. This first cry of the soul for liberation is the result of the realization that were this earth all that poets have dreamed it, were every evil swept away, every sorrow put an end to, every joy intensified, every beauty enhanced, were everything raised to the point of perfection, he would still be weary of it, would turn from it, void of desire. It has become to him a prison, and let it be decorated as it may, he pants for the free and limitless air beyond its enclosing walls. Nor is heaven more attracted to him than earth. Of that too he is aweary. Its joys have lost their attractiveness. Even its intellectual and emotional delights no longer satisfy. They also come and go, impermanent like the contacts of the senses. They are limited, transient, unsatisfying. He is tired of the changing. From very weariness he cries out for liberty. Sometimes this realization of the worthlessness of earth and heaven is at first but as a flash in consciousness, and the external worlds reassert their empire, and the glamour of their elusive joys again laps the soul into content. Some lives even may pass, full of noble work and unselfish achievement, of pure thoughts and lofty deeds, ere this realization of the emptiness of all that is phenomenal becomes the permanent attitude of the soul. But sooner or later the soul, once and forever, breaks with earth and heaven as incompetent to satisfy his needs, and this definite turning away from the transitory, this definite will to reach the eternal, is the gateway to the probationary path. The soul steps off the highway of evolution to breast the steeper climb up the mountainside, resolute to escape from the bondage of earthly and heavenly lives, and to reach the freedom of the upper air. The work which has to be accomplished by the man who enters the probationary path is entirely mental and moral. He has to bring himself up to the point at which he will be fit to meet his master face to face. But the very words his master need explanation. There are certain great beings belonging to our race who have completed their human evolution, and to whom allusion has already been made as constituting a brotherhood, and as guiding and forwarding the development of the race. These great ones, the masters, voluntarily incarnate in human bodies in order to form the connecting link between human and superhuman beings, and they permit those who fulfill certain conditions to become their disciples, who, with the object of hastening with their evolution and thus qualifying themselves to enter the great brotherhood and to assist in its glorious and beneficent work for man. The masters ever watch the race and mark any who, by the practice of virtue, by unselfish labor for human good, by intellectual effort, turn to the service of man, by sincere devotion, piety, and purity, draw ahead of the mass of their fellows, and render themselves capable of receiving spiritual assistance beyond that shed down on mankind as a whole. If an individual is to receive special help, he must show special receptivity. For the masters are the distributors of the spiritual energies that help on human evolution, and the use of these for the swifter growth of a single soul is only permitted when the soul shows a capacity for rapid progress, and thus can be quickly fitted to become a helper of the race, returning to it the aid that has been afforded to himself. When a man by his own efforts, utilizing to the full of the general help coming to him through religion and philosophy, has struggled onwards to the front of the advancing human wave, and when he shows a loving, selfless, helpful nature, then he becomes a special object of attention to the watchful guardians of the race, and opportunities are put in his way to test his strength and call forth his intuition. In proportion as he successfully uses these, he is yet further helped, and glimpses are afforded him of his true life, until the unsatisfactory and unreal nature of mundane existence presses more and more on the soul, and with the result already mentioned, the weariness that makes him long for freedom and brings him to the gateway of the probationary path. His entrance on this path places him in the position of a disciple or chela on probation, and someone master takes him under his care, recognizing him as a man who has stepped out of the highway of evolution and seeks the teacher who shall guide his steps along the steep and narrow path which leads to liberation. That teacher is awaiting him at the very entrance of the path, and even though the neophyte knows not his teacher knows him, sees his efforts, directs his steps, leads him into the conditions that best subserve his progress, watching over him with the tender solicitude of a mother and with the wisdom born of perfect insight. The road may seem lonely and dark, and the young disciple may fancy himself deserted, but a friend who sticketh closer than a brother, in quotes, is ever at hand, and the help withheld from the senses is given to the soul. There are 4 definite qualifications that the probationary chela must set himself to acquire, that are, by the wisdom of the great brotherhood, laid down as the conditions of full discipleship. They are not asked for in perfection, but they must be striven for and partially possessed ere initiation is permitted. The first of these is the discrimination between the real and the unreal, which has already been dawning on the mind of the pupil, and which drew him to the path on which he has now entered. The distinction grows clear and sharply defined in his mind, and gradually frees him to a great extent from the fetters which bind him. For the second qualification, indifference to external things, comes naturally in the wake of discrimination from the clear perception of their worthlessness. He learns that the weariness which took all the savor out of life was due to the disappointments constantly arising from his search for satisfaction in the unreal, when only the real can content the soul. That all forms are unreal and without stability, changing ever under the impulses of life, and that nothing is real but the one life that we seek for and love unconsciously under its many veils. This discrimination is much stimulated by the rapidly changing circumstances into which a disciple is generally thrown, with the view of pressing on him strongly the instability of the external things. The lives of a disciple are generally lives of storm and stress, in order that the qualities which are normally evolved in a long succession of lives in the 3 worlds may in him be forced into quick growth and quickly brought to perfection, as he alternates rapidly from joy to sorrow, from peace to storm, from rest to toil. He learns to see in the changes the unreal forms, and to feel through all a steady, unchanging life. He grows indifferent to the presence or the absence of things that thus come and go, and more he focuses his gaze on the changeless reality that is ever present. While he is thus gaining in insight and stability, he works also at the development of the 3rd qualification, the 6 mental attributes that are demanded from him ere he may enter on the path itself. He need not possess all of them perfectly, but he must have all of them partially present, at least ere he will be permitted to pass onward. First, he must gain control over his thoughts, the progeny of the restless, unruly mind, hard to curb as the wind. Steady daily practice in meditation and concentration has begun to reduce this mental rebel, in order ere he entered on the probationary path, and the disciple now works with concentrated energy to complete the task, knowing that the great increase in thought power that will accompany his rapid growth will prove a danger both to others and to himself, unless the developing force be thoroughly under his control. Better give a child dynamite as a plaything than place the creative powers of thought in the hands of the selfish and the ambitious. Secondly, the young cella must add outward self-control to inner, and he must rule his speech and his actions as rigidly as he rules his thoughts. As the mind obeys the soul, so must the lower nature obey the mind. The usefulness of the disciple in the outer world depends as much on the pure and noble example set by his viable life as his usefulness in the inner world depends on the steadiness and the strength of his thoughts. Often is the good work marred by carelessness in this lower part of human activity, and the aspirant is bidden strive towards to an ideal perfect in every part, in order that he may not later, when treading the path, stumble in his own walk and cause the enemy to blaspheme. As already said, perfection in anything is not demanded at this stage, but the wise pupil strives towards perfection, knowing that at least he is still far away from his ideal. Thirdly, the candidate for full discipleship seeks to build into himself the sublime and far-reaching virtue of tolerance, the quiet acceptance of each man, each form of existence, as it is, without demand that it should be something other, shaped more to his own liking. Beginning to realize that the one life takes on countless limitations, each right in his own place and time, he accepts each limited expression of that life without wishing to transform it into something else. He learns to revere the wisdom which planned this world and which guides it, and to view with wide-eyed serenity the imperfect parts as they slowly work out their partial lives. The drunkard, learning his alphabet of suffering caused by the dominance of his lower nature, is doing as usefully in his own stage as is the saint in his, completing his last lesson in earth's school, and no more can justify be demanded from either than he is able to perform. One is in the kindergarten stage, learning the object lessons, while the other is graduating, ready to leave his university. Both are right for their own age and their place, and should be helped and sympathized with in their place. This is one of the lessons of what is known in occultism as tolerance. Fourthly, must be developed endurance, the endurance that cheerfully bears all and resents nothing, going straight onwards, unswerving to the goal. Nothing can come to him but by the law, and he knows the law is good. He understands that the rocky pathway that leads up the mountain straight to the summit cannot be as easy to his feet as the well-beaten, winding highway. He realizes that he is paying in a few short lives all the karmic obligations accumulated during his past, and that the payments must be correspondingly heavy. The very struggles into which he is plunged develop in him the fifth attribute, faith. Faith in his master and in himself, a serene, strong confidence that is unshakable. He learns to trust in the wisdom, the love, the power of his master, and he's beginning to realize not only to say he believes in the divinity within his own heart, able to subdue all things to himself, the last mental requisite balance, equilibrium, grows up to some extent without conscious effort during the striving after the preceding five. The very setting of the will to tread the path is a sign that the higher nature is opening out, and that the external world is definitely relegated to a lower place. The continuous efforts to lead the life of discipleship disentangle the soul from any remaining ties that may knit it to the world of sense. For the withdrawal of the soul's attention from the lower objects gradually exhausts the attractive power of those objects. They turn away from the abstemious dweller in the body, and soon lose all power to disturb this balance. Thus he learns to move amid them undisturbed, neither seeking nor rejecting any. He also learns balance amid mental troubles of any kind, and amid alternations of mental joy and mental pain. This balance, for being further taught by the swift changes already spoken of through his life, is guided by the ever-watchful care of his master. And I'm going to pause here and continue later. So till soon.